Imagine stepping back in time, over 300 years ago, to the year 1700. The place? Liverpool. Forget the iconic skyline, the bustling Albert Dock, and the roar of Anfield. What we're about to explore is a humble, muddy little town, a place on the very cusp of a transformation that would change the world. So, what did Liverpool actually look like in 1700? Let's take a walk through its streets. The town was tiny, barely a cluster of a few hundred houses huddled around 7 main streets. Picture this: Lord Street, Castle Street, Dale Street, Wardour Street, Chapel Street, Old Hall Street, and High Street. These weren't grand avenues. They were narrow, unpaved, and often slick with mud and refuse. Animals like pigs and chickens would have roamed freely, foraging for scraps right alongside the townsfolk. The houses themselves were a mix of medieval and early modern styles. Many were timber-framed, with wattle and daub walls, and thatched or slate roofs. The air would have been thick with the smell of wood smoke from countless chimneys, mingled with the salty tang of the River Mersey and the less pleasant aromas of a town with no modern sanitation. It was a world of raw, earthy sensations. At the very heart of this community stood Liverpool Castle. By 1700, it was already a centuries-old fortress, a stone sentinel that had seen its share of history. Though its military importance was fading, it remained a dominant landmark, its weathered walls a constant reminder of the town's medieval past. Its presence would have been felt by every single resident, a symbol of authority and permanence in a rapidly changing world. But the real heart of Liverpool, the source of its future destiny, was at harbour. This wasn't the sophisticated port of later years. In 1700, it was essentially just a natural inlet from the River Mersey, known as the Pool. Ships would anchor in the river or be pulled into this muddy creek at high tide. When the tide went out, they'd be left sitting on the mudflats, where men with horse-drawn carts would trudge out to load and unload their cargo. It was a slow, messy, and inefficient process, entirely dependent on the whims of nature. Daily life was governed by the rhythms of the seasons, the tides, and the church bell. Most men were sailors, fishermen, shipwrights, rope makers, or laborious connected to the sea. The port was their lifeblood. Other men worked as farmers on the land surrounding the town, or as merchants and artisans in the small workshops lining the streets. So, what were these ships carrying? The trade was diverse but still relatively modest. Goods like salt from nearby Cheshire, coal from Lancashire, and textiles were being exported. Coming in were things like timber from the Baltic, wine from France and Spain, and, crucially, sugar and tobacco from the Americas and the West Indies. This trade with the New World was the seed that was about to sprout into a forest. But let's be clear. While this transatlantic trade was growing, Liverpool in 1700 was not yet the dominant slaving port it would tragically become. That dark chapter was just beginning to be written. At this moment, the town's maritime focus was more varied, a mix of coastal trade, Irish sea connections, and the burgeoning long-distance voyages. The conversations in the taverns would have been filled with tales of storms, distant lands, and the fluctuating prices of goods. A pivotal moment was just on the horizon. The town's merchants, men of vision and ambition, recognized that the muddy pool was holding them back. They needed a way to keep ships afloat regardless of the tide, to load and unload them quickly and safely. Their solution was revolutionary. They decided to build the world's first commercial enclosed wet dock. Construction would begin a few years after our snapshot in 1700, but the plans and the ambition were already brewing. This dock, later known as the Old Dock, would be built right over the pool, forever changing the town's landscape and supercharging its commercial power. Imagine the mindset of a young man living in Liverpool at this time. He would see the tall masts of ships arriving from places he could only dream of. He would hear foreign languages in the streets and see exotic goods being hauled from the riverbank. There was a sense of possibility in the air, a feeling that this small town was connected to a much wider world. The sea wasn't just a boundary. It was a highway to fortune, adventure, and unimaginable change. Work was physically demanding, and the threat of disease was ever present. Yet, there was also a powerful sense of community and resilience. As we look at this AI reconstruction of Liverpool in 1700, we see a town of contrasts. It was ancient and new, muddy and ambitious, small yet looking out at the entire globe. The stone of the old castle stood beside the new ideas brewing in the minds of its merchants. The quiet rhythm of rural life coexisted with the unpredictable energy of the sea. It was a place on the brink, a sleeping giant about to be awakened by the tides of history and trade. The decision to build that first dock was the key that unlocked Liverpool's potential. It was an audacious gamble, a massive investment for such a small community. but it paid off spectacularly. It attracted more ships, more trade, and more people. It set in motion a chain reaction that would transform Liverpool from a minor port into one of the most important cities in the British Empire. So, as our journey back to 1700 comes to an end, remember this image of a small, determined town by the sea. A town of muddy streets, a fading castle, and a harbour full of potential. Everything that Liverpool would become, its wealth, its global influence, its magnificent architecture, and its complex, often difficult history, all started here, in this humble port on the edge of the 18th century. This was the foundation upon which a legend was built. Thank you so much for joining me on this trip back in time. If you enjoyed this glimpse into the past, please give this video a like and subscribe for more historical explorations. Let us know in the comments what other moments in history you'd like to see brought to life. Until next time, stay curious.